They whispered gold digger behind crystal champagne glasses at the family Christmas gathering, not knowing I held the papers that would silence their privileged smirks forever. The revelation would transform not just their holidays, but their entire understanding of success, family, and judgment. The pristine snow fell softly outside the Thompson family's sprawling Victorian mansion in the prestigious Heights neighborhood of Burlington, Massachusetts. Crystal icicles caught the warm glow from imported Italian fixtures, creating a picture-perfect holiday scene that belonged on the cover of Architectural Digest. Inside, the 20-foot Christmas tree dominated the grand foyer, its carefully curated ornaments telling the story of old money and generational wealth. I stood in front of the antique mirror in the guest bathroom, adjusting my simple black sweater from Target, a stark contrast to the designer labels I knew awaited me beyond these doors. At 35, Elena Martinez Thompson didn't look like what most people expected of a corporate titan. My straight dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, my makeup minimal, and the only jewelry I wore was my grandmother's silver pendant and a modest wedding band. No flashy diamonds, no obvious signs of wealth. The sounds of the Thompson family's annual Christmas Eve gathering filtered through the thick mahogany door, crystal glasses clinking, practiced laughs, and the subtle undertones of string quartet music. This year was different, though. This year, I wasn't just David's questionable choice of a wife, as his mother Caroline loved to whisper to her country club friends. I was the anonymous buyer who had acquired Thompson Manufacturing 3 months ago, the mysterious CEO who had been running their family company through a series of holding companies and proxies. Not even my husband knew. David worked in the company's legal department, a position he'd earned through merit rather than nepotism, unlike his cousins and siblings. He thought I ran a small but successful consulting firm, a convenient cover that explained my frequent business meetings and comfortable income without raising suspicions about my true role as the owner of a Fortune 500 company. I checked my phone one last time. A message from my CFO confirmed that the final documents had been signed. After tonight, there would be no more hiding, no more pretending. The thought made my hands tremble slightly as I recalled the journey. That led here, starting as a janitor's daughter who cleaned Thompson Manufacturing's offices at night while studying for my MBA, rising through competitors' ranks, and finally acquiring the very company that had once seen me as nothing more than part of the invisible workforce that kept their pristine world running. The bathroom door rattled with a sharp knock. "Elena." "Darling?" Caroline Thompson's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. "We're all waiting, though I understand if you need a moment to prepare yourself for civilized company." I took a deep breath, smoothing invisible wrinkles from my sweater. In her Chanel suit and pearls, Caroline had never approved of her son marrying someone she considered beneath their social station. She'd spent the last 2 years making subtle and not-so-subtle remarks about my background, my clothes, my apparent lack of proper breeding. "Coming, Caroline," I replied, my voice steady despite the anticipation building in my chest. Tonight's gathering included not just the immediate family, but the entire Thompson clan, board members, shareholders, and the entitled descendants of the company's founder. They'd all come to celebrate what they thought was their continued dynasty, unaware that their family's company had been slipping through their fingers due to their own mismanagement and outdated perspectives. Through the bathroom's small window, I could see more luxury cars pulling up to the mansion, Mercedes, Bentleys, and Maseratis carrying the extended Thompson family and their equally wealthy friends. Each arrival represented another witness to what would become a Christmas Eve like no other in the family's carefully curated history. I pulled out a small envelope from my simple clutch purse, the kind Caroline had once called quaint, with that particular tone that made the word sound like an insult. Inside was the document that would change everything: proof of ownership, restructuring plans, and the truth about who really controlled the company that had been the source of the Thompson family's pride for generations. The string quartet began playing Carol of the Bells, its complex harmonies echoing through the mansion's marble halls. It felt like a soundtrack to the evening's coming drama, each note building toward an inevitable crescendo. I tucked the envelope away and opened the bathroom door, stepping out into the warmly lit hallway. It was time to begin a Christmas celebration that would become legendary in the Thompson family history, though not for the reasons any of them expected. The weight of my laptop bag felt reassuring against my shoulder as I moved through the mansion's opulent hallway. Inside, encrypted files detailed every Thompson manufacturing financial decision of the past decade, proof of mismanagement that had allowed me to quietly acquire controlling shares through various holdings. But tonight, the bag served as my armor, a reminder of how far I'd come from the days when I watched my father mop these same floors. David caught my eye from across the grand living room, his warm smile a stark contrast to the cold appraisal of his relatives. My husband stood by the fireplace, his 6-foot frame relaxed in a well-worn blazer that had seen better days. Unlike his family, David had rejected the path of privilege, choosing instead to work his way up through the company's legal department on merit alone. His modest salary often drew disapproving glances from his siblings, but it was one of the many reasons I'd fallen in love with him. "There you are, Elena," Margaret Thompson, David's aunt, called out with practiced sophistication. "We were just discussing the company's recent changes." She paused, swirling her aged scotch. "Such a shame about the mysterious new ownership. I don't suppose your little consulting firm has any insights." I caught the subtle dig in her tone. My little consulting firm was their code for what they considered my quaint attempt at business, a way to patronize my career while dismissing any real success. If they only knew that my small business was actually a complex network of holding companies that now controlled their family legacy. "I try not to mix business with family gatherings," I replied diplomatically, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. The same server who, like my father years ago, seemed invisible to the Thompson family, but had helped me understand the true inner workings of their company during my months of research before the acquisition. Richard Thompson Jr., David's older brother and the family's self-appointed financial genius, couldn't resist joining in. "How sensible," he smirked, adjusting his Rolex. "Though some of us can't help but take pride in our family's legacy. 4 generations of success, built on tradition and proper breeding." The words proper breeding hung in the air like frost. I thought of my father, who had immigrated with nothing but hope and determination, working night shifts as a janitor to put me through school. He had taught me more about dignity and work ethic than any of the Thompsons' Ivy League educations ever could. Alexandra, Richard's wife, touched my arm with perfectly manicured fingers. "Elena, darling, I simply must know. Where did you find that? Interesting sweater? It's so unique." Her voice dripped with the same condescension that had fueled my determination to succeed all these years. "Target," I answered honestly, enjoying how the single word made her recoil slightly. "They have surprisingly good quality." The horror on her face was worth every moment of judgment I'd endured since marrying into this family. Across the room, I noticed David's cousin Victoria whispering to a group of shareholders, occasionally glancing in my direction. Victoria had been particularly vocal about her disappointment when David married beneath his station. Now she served as head of public relations for Thompson Manufacturing, or at least she did until tomorrow, when the new ownership structure would be revealed. A staff member appeared at my elbow, Maria, one of the housekeepers who had worked for the Thompsons for decades. Like my father, she had been part of the invisible workforce that kept their world running smoothly. "Mrs. Martinez Thompson," she said quietly, "your package arrived." Her eyes held a knowing look. She was one of the few who knew my true identity, having helped arrange my father's retirement party years ago when he finally left his position as head janitor. "Thank you, Maria." I replied warmly, noting how several family members frowned at my familiar tone with the help. The package contained the final piece of documentation I needed, proof that the Thompson family's recent financial decisions had nearly bankrupted the company before my intervention. I excused myself, moving toward the elaborate Christmas tree where David stood chatting with his father, Richard Sr. The family patriarch's voice carried across the room as he lectured his youngest son about ambition. "Really, David, it's time you thought about your position in the company. Your cousin James is being promoted to vice president, and here you are, still pushing papers in legal. What would your grandfather say?" My husband's patient smile didn't waver. "I'm happy where I am, Dad. Not everyone measures success by their title or salary." His eyes met mine, filled with the quiet confidence that had first drawn me to him. He had no idea that tomorrow he would be offered the position of chief legal officer, not because of his name, but because he was genuinely the most qualified person for the job. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. While the Thompson family looked down on their son's underachieving wife, I had been orchestrating the largest corporate restructuring in their company's history. Every disapproving glance, every backhanded compliment had only strengthened my resolve to prove that success wasn't about breeding or background. It was about vision, determination, and integrity. The annual Thompson family Christmas gathering had always been more of a shareholders' meeting disguised as a holiday celebration. In the mansion's grand dining room, where a table stretched long enough to seat 30 people, the true hierarchy of the family was on full display. Crystal glasses caught the light from the antique chandelier, creating prisms that danced across the hand-painted silk wallpaper imported from Paris. "I heard the new ownership is making radical changes," Benjamin Thompson, David's second cousin and head of sales, announced to the assembled group. "My sources say they're planning to modernize everything. Can you imagine? 4 generations of tradition, and some outsider thinks they know better." He cast a suspicious glance in my direction, as if somehow connecting my presence to the company's recent upheaval. The conversation around the table shifted like a well-choreographed dance, each family member eager to share their opinions on the company's future. I noticed how the seating arrangement itself told a story. The most influential family members clustered near Richard Sr. at the head of the table, while those who had married in or held lesser positions were relegated to the far ends. "I heard they're planning to implement new diversity initiatives," Victoria said with obvious distaste, adjusting her pearl necklace. "As if we need to change our hiring practices. The Thompson name has always stood for excellence, not social experiments." She paused, looking pointedly at me. "Though I suppose some of us have different standards." Catherine, David's younger sister and the only family member who had ever shown me genuine kindness, spoke up from her place halfway down the table. "Perhaps change isn't such a bad thing," she suggested, earning several sharp looks. "The world is different now than it was in grandfather's time." "That's exactly the kind of thinking that threatens old money," Alexandra interjected, her voice carrying that peculiar mix of authority and disdain that seemed to be taught at expensive finishing schools. "Next, you'll suggest we start hiring people without the right background." The way her eyes flickered to me made it clear what kind of background she meant. The server appeared at my elbow, refilling water glasses. I recognized him as Carlos, Maria's son, who was working his way through college just as I had done years ago. The Thompson family barely acknowledged his presence, but I noticed how carefully he attended to each guest, his dignity intact despite their dismissive attitudes. "Speaking of background," Margaret Thompson said, lifting her wine glass. "Elena, darling, you never did tell us much about your family's business interests. What did you say your father did before he retired?" The question was posed with fake sweetness, but the trap was clear. She knew exactly what my father had done for a living. The table grew quiet, anticipating my response. David tensed beside me, but I placed a gentle hand on his arm. My father was part of the facilities management team at Thompson Manufacturing, I replied clearly, my voice carrying across the silence. He cleaned the executive offices for 25 years. The reaction around the table was immediate, but carefully controlled. Raised eyebrows, exchanged glances, and the slight pursing of expertly lipsticked mouths. Richard Jr. actually choked slightly on his wine. How interesting, Caroline Thompson said, her voice pitched to Carrie. And now here you are, joining us for Christmas dinner. Isn't America wonderful? Anyone can rise above their station, though of course, breeding does tend to show eventually. Mother, David started, but I squeezed his hand under the table. This wasn't the moment, not yet. James Thompson, recently promoted to vice president despite his notorious incompetence, couldn't resist adding his thoughts. I suppose that explains your unique perspective on business, he said with a smirk. Your little consulting company must seem quite impressive compared to cleaning offices. I took a slow sip of water, thinking of the folder in my laptop, bag that detailed James's recent decision to invest millions in a failed project, against all advice from the actual experts. That decision alone had cost the company nearly 15% of its quarterly profits. Tell me, James, I said carefully, how is the Singapore expansion project progressing? I watched his face pale slightly. The project's failure wasn't public knowledge yet, but as the owner of the company, I had seen all the reports. That's confidential company business, he stammered, shooting a nervous glance at his uncle Richard Sr. Of course, I smiled. Just taking an interest in the family business. The conversation shifted again, but I noticed how James kept glancing in my direction, uncertainty creeping into his previously confident demeanor. Around the table, other family members continued their subtle display of social hierarchy. The way they spoke over certain relatives, the dismissive gestures toward those they considered beneath them, the careful alliance building disguised as dinner conversation. Carlos returned with the main course, and I watched as the family's mask of superiority briefly slipped to reveal their eagerness for the expensive meal. In that moment, they seemed less like the intimidating dynasty they pretended to be and more like what they really were. People desperately clinging to an image of themselves that was rapidly becoming obsolete. The elaborate dessert course arrived as the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9. While Caroline Thompson directed the staff with imperious waves of her hand, I discreetly checked my phone under the table. A message from my executive assistant confirmed that everything was prepared for tomorrow morning's board meeting, the meeting that would shake the very foundation of the Thompson family's carefully constructed world. I do hope you're not conducting your little business during family time, Caroline remarked, her eyes sharp despite her pleasant tone. Though I suppose some people never learn proper dinner etiquette. The comment drew quiet snickers from several family members, particularly Victoria and Alexandra. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, thinking of the real reason for my message check. Across the city, teams of auditors were preparing to enter every Thompson manufacturing facility at dawn. The evidence of financial mismanagement, nepotistic, hiring practices, and questionable business decisions would all be documented, leaving no room for the family to maintain their illusion of superior business acumen. Elena was probably just checking on her father, Richard Jr. suggested with mock concern. I hear the retirement home where he lives is quite adequate, for that tax bracket, of course. He shared a knowing look with James, both men chuckling into their cognac glasses. What they didn't know was that my father now lived in a beautiful villa in Spain, his retirement fully funded by his daughter's success. The same success that would soon reshape their understanding of what true business acumen looked like. Actually, I said, maintaining my composure, I was confirming some details about tomorrow's company announcement. I hear it's quite significant. The subtle emphasis on significant caused James to shift uncomfortably in his chair, no doubt thinking about his failed Singapore project. David's cousin Peter, who headed the company's technology division, despite his notorious resistance to innovation, leaned forward with sudden interest. "What do you know about tomorrow's announcement?" His tone carried an edge of worry, as well it should, given that his department's outdated practices had cost the company millions in potential contracts. "Oh, just rumors," I replied lightly, watching as uncertainty rippled through the gathered family members. "Something about new management structures, modernization initiatives, performance reviews." I let the words hang in the air, noting how several people around the table suddenly seemed very interested in their dessert plates. Catherine, ever observant, caught my eye with a questioning look. Of all the Thompsons, she alone had demonstrated genuine business insight, yet her suggestions had been consistently dismissed because of her gender. She would be surprised to find herself appointed as Chief Innovation Officer tomorrow, a position based entirely on merit rather than family connections. "I'm sure Elena's sources are as reliable as her fashion choices," Alexandra interjected, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Though speaking of changes, has anyone heard about the Morton family? Apparently they lost control of their company to some mysterious investor. How absolutely dreadful." The Morton situation had been my first major acquisition, a practice run of sorts for the Thompson takeover. I had modernized their operations, implemented fair labor practices, and turned their failing business into a model of corporate efficiency, all while maintaining my anonymity. "The Mortons were weak," Richard Sr. pronounced from the head of the table. "They lost their company because they lacked the strength of proper family leadership. That could never happen to Thompson Manufacturing. We have 4 generations of superior business intelligence in our blood." I took a slow sip of wine, savoring both its flavor and the irony of his statement. In my laptop bag, just a few feet away, sat documents proving that the Thompson family's superior business intelligence had nearly driven their company into bankruptcy. Only my careful, anonymous intervention over the past year had prevented a complete collapse. "Blood isn't always the best indicator of business acumen," I suggested mildly. "Sometimes an outside perspective can be valuable." "My dear," Caroline said with exaggerated patience, as if speaking to a child, "you can hardly expect to understand the complexities of running a family dynasty when your own background is so limited. Some things simply can't be learned without proper breeding." The room grew quiet as Carlos returned to clear the dessert plates. I noticed how the family barely acknowledged him, their eyes sliding past him as if he were invisible. Just as they had done with my father for all those years. Just as they had done with me until I married David. Little did they know that tomorrow, Carlos would be announced as the head of our new employee education initiative, a program designed to help staff advance their careers through education and training. The very program that the Thompson family had repeatedly voted down as unnecessary expenditure. The hidden weight of tomorrow's revelations sat like a comfortable secret in my chest. Each dismissive comment, each condescending glance only served to reinforce the rightness of what was to come. As I watched the family continue their subtle power plays and social maneuvering, I thought about how this would likely be the last Christmas celebration of its kind at the Thompson mansion. As the evening progressed into the traditional gift exchange, the Thompson family moved to the grand living room where the massive Christmas tree towered over carefully arranged piles of expensive presents. The ritual had always been more about display than genuine giving, each gift a calculated statement about status and financial superiority. "Elena," Caroline called out with theatrical enthusiasm, "do come here, dear. We have something special for you this year." The way she emphasized special made several family members exchange knowing looks. I rose from my seat beside David, already anticipating what was to come. Victoria handed me an elaborately wrapped package, her smile sharp as cut glass. "We all contributed to this," she announced to the room. "We thought it was appropriate." The box was heavy, wrapped in designer paper that probably cost more than what they thought I made in a week. As I carefully unwrapped the gift, maintaining my composure despite the anticipatory silence, I revealed a leather-bound book. Its gold-embossed title read, "From Rags to Riches, a Guide to Social Advancement and Proper Etiquette for the Aspiring Classes." "We thought you could use some guidance," Alexandra explained with fake sweetness, "especially given your humble origins. The chapter on dinner party conversation is particularly illuminating." She glanced meaningfully at Richard Sr. "There's even a section on appropriate clothing choices for different social occasions." David started to rise from his chair, his face flushed with anger, but I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. This moment needed to play out exactly as they had planned it. Besides, the leather briefcase in my study contained documents showing how Alexandra had been embezzling company funds to support her shopping addiction, a fact that would come to light very soon. "There's also a lovely chapter about knowing one's place in society," Margaret added, her voice dripping with false concern. "So important for those trying to adapt to a different social sphere." She gestured to my simple black sweater as if it were evidence of some sort of moral failing. I turned the book over in my hands, noting its expensive binding and custom printing. "How thoughtful," I replied, my voice steady. "You must have put a lot of effort into this." "Well," Caroline interjected, "we all agreed it was necessary, especially after that embarrassing incident at the country club last month." She referred to the time I had called out one of their board members for making racist comments about the staff, an incident that had apparently scandalized their social circle. James couldn't resist adding his own barb. "There's an excellent section on appropriate career aspirations. Perhaps it will help you understand why certain positions in the company require a more distinguished background." He smoothed his custom-made suit, seemingly oblivious to the fact that his department had lost millions under his leadership. "I particularly enjoyed the chapter on financial prudence," Richard Jr. chimed in. "It explains why some people are simply better suited to managing significant wealth. Blood will tell, after all." The irony of his statement nearly made me smile, considering the reports in my laptop detailing his numerous failed investment strategies that had cost the company dearly. Catherine watched the scene unfold with growing discomfort, her hands twisting in her lap. She alone seemed to recognize the cruelty masked as generosity. "Perhaps we should move on to the other gifts," she suggested, but her voice was drowned out by the continuing commentary. "Of course, we don't expect miracles," Victoria added, sharing a laugh with Alexandra. "Some people simply aren't meant for certain social circles, no matter how hard they try to elevate themselves." She cast a meaningful glance at my simple gold wedding band, a stark contrast to her own ostentatious diamond ring. I placed the book carefully on the side table, noting how its presence seemed to dominate the room like a physical manifestation of their prejudice. The moment felt surreal. These people, so confident in their superiority, had no idea that I could buy and sell their personal fortunes several times over. "Thank you for this enlightening gift," I said finally, my voice carrying just enough edge to make several family members shift uncomfortably. "I'm sure tomorrow will bring many interesting revelations about social position and proper place in society." The subtle emphasis on tomorrow made James and Peter exchange nervous glances. They had probably started hearing rumors about the upcoming changes at the company, though they couldn't possibly imagine the full scope of what was coming. The gift exchange tension was interrupted by the arrival of Henry Blackwood III, chairman of the Thompson Manufacturing Board of Directors, and his wife Evelyn. Their unexpected appearance sent a ripple of excitement through the room. Henry rarely attended family functions, preferring to maintain a professional distance despite his long-standing friendship with Richard Sr. "Henry, what a delightful surprise!" Caroline exclaimed, quickly moving to greet them. The room's dynamic shifted instantly. with family members jockeying for position to catch the chairman's attention. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance of power and privilege. "I hope you don't mind us dropping by," Henry announced, his commanding presence drawing all eyes. Given tomorrow's board meeting, I thought it prudent to discuss certain matters informally first. His gaze swept the room, lingering momentarily on me before moving on, a dismissal I had grown accustomed to over the years. Richard Sr. immediately took charge, gesturing toward his private study. "Of course, Henry. Shall we step into my office? Elena, dear, why don't you help the staff clear away the gift wrapping?" The dismissal was clear, accompanied by knowing smirks from Victoria and Alexandra. "Actually," Henry interjected, "I'd like Mrs. Martinez Thompson to join us." The room fell silent, shock evident on every face. Given her connection to certain aspects of tomorrow's meeting, my heart raced, but I maintained my composure. Had Henry somehow discovered my identity? A quick glance at his inscrutable expression revealed nothing. David squeezed my hand supportively, though he too looked confused by this unexpected turn of events. "Surely you can't be serious, Henry," Richard Jr. protested. "This is a matter for actual board members and executives." He straightened his Italian silk tie, a nervous habit I'd noticed during particularly tense board meetings he didn't know I had observed via secure video feed. Henry's response was diplomatic but firm. "I believe Mrs. Martinez Thompson's perspective could be valuable." He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Shall we?" As I followed Henry and Richard Sr. toward the study, I could hear the whispered conversations erupting behind us. Alexandra's voice carried clearly. "What could she possibly contribute? She probably doesn't even understand basic corporate structure." The study was exactly what you'd expect from a man who prided himself on old money, dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, and the overwhelming scent of expensive cigars. Family photos lined the walls, generations of Thompsons staring down with identical expressions of entitled superiority. "Now then," Henry began once the door closed, "I understand there have been some interesting developments regarding company ownership." His eyes fixed on me with newfound intensity. Developments that might make tonight's gift-giving seem rather ironic in retrospect. Richard Sr. waved dismissively. "Henry, if this is about those rumors of a takeover, I assure you the Thompson family maintains controlling interest. Our position is completely secure." I watched as Henry removed a folder from his briefcase, a folder I recognized as containing the very documents I had planned to reveal tomorrow. "Are you quite sure about that, Richard?" He placed the folder on the mahogany desk. "Because these ownership records tell a rather different story." "What are you talking about?" Richard Sr. demanded, reaching for the folder. As he scanned the documents, his face paled visibly. This can't be right. These shell companies, these holding corporations." His head snapped up, eyes narrowing at me. "You." The moment of realization was everything I had anticipated and more. Henry's subtle nod confirmed my suspicion. He had figured it out days ago and had chosen this moment to reveal his knowledge. "Impossible," Richard Sr. spluttered, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "You're nothing but a janitor's daughter. You couldn't possibly—" "She's been quite brilliant, actually," Henry interrupted. "Building a corporate empire right under everyone's noses while they were too busy judging her background to notice. Her capabilities. Rather fitting, don't you think?" The study door burst open as Richard Jr. strode in, followed by James and Victoria, all drawn by the raised voices from within. The folder of ownership documents lay open on Richard Sr.'s desk, its contents transforming the room's atmosphere into something electric with tension and disbelief. "What's going on here?" Richard Jr. demanded, his usual smooth confidence wavering at the sight of his father's ashen face. "Dad, what are these papers?" He reached for the documents, but Henry smoothly intercepted them. "Perhaps," Henry suggested, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "We should move this discussion back to the main room. It seems the Thompson family Christmas celebration is about to take an unexpected turn." His slight smile in my direction confirmed that he was enjoying this moment almost as much as I was. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat, her social instincts sensing the shift in power dynamics. "Surely we don't need to involve everyone in what must be a simple misunderstanding." Her eyes darted between me and the documents, a hint of fear creeping into her expression. "On the contrary," I spoke for the first time since entering the study, my voice steady and clear. "I think it's time we involved everyone." The authority in my tone made Richard Jr. step back involuntarily. It was the voice of a CEO, not the submissive in-law they had dismissed for so long. As we moved back into the grand living room, the other family members looked up from their post-gift exchange conversations. David rose from his seat, concern evident on his face. He started to move toward me, but something in my expression made him pause. "If I could have everyone's attention," Henry announced, his voice cutting through the murmured conversations. "It seems we have an important announcement that simply can't wait until tomorrow's board meeting." Caroline attempted to take control of the situation, her society manners kicking in. "Surely this can wait until after the holidays. We wouldn't want to spoil the festive atmosphere with business talk." She shot me a warning look, clearly trying to put me in my perceived place. "I'm afraid this can't wait, Caroline," I replied, stepping forward. The room fell silent at my tone. It was the first time I had ever directly challenged her authority, in her own home. "Especially given the generous gift you all gave me earlier." I picked up the etiquette book from the side table, its gold-embossed title catching the light. "Elena," Alexandra began, her voice sickly sweet. "Perhaps you should let the men handle these business matters. After all what?" I interrupted, enjoying how her eyes widened at my boldness. "After all, I'm just a janitor's daughter? Or perhaps, after all, I couldn't possibly understand the complexities of running a major corporation." James shifted uncomfortably, no doubt remembering his earlier comments about distinguished backgrounds. Peter tugged at his collar, while Victoria's face had taken on an interesting shade of pale. "What my daughter-in-law is trying to say," Richard Sr. attempted to regain control, though his voice lacked its usual authority, "is that there appear to be some questions about company ownership that need to be addressed in a proper business setting." "Oh, there are no questions," Henry interjected, holding up the folder. "The documentation is quite clear. The majority ownership of Thompson Manufacturing has changed hands. Through a series of brilliant and entirely legal maneuvers, Mrs. Martinez Thompson has acquired controlling interest in the company." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the crackling of the fireplace seemed muted, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Catherine was the first to break into a smile, realization dawning on her face as pieces of the puzzle fell into place. David looked at me with a mixture of shock and pride, finally understanding why I had maintained my calm through years of subtle insults and condescension. His hand found mine, squeezing it supportively as we faced his family together. "This is absurd!" Richard Jr. was the first to explode, his face flushing red with anger. "She's lying. This is some sort of cheap manipulation." He stormed toward me, jabbing his finger in my direction. "You really expect us to believe that a woman who shops at Target owns our company?" David stepped forward protectively, but I placed a gentle hand on his arm. This was my moment to handle. The room crackled with tension as other family members began finding their voices, their perfectly cultivated Christmas celebration dissolving into chaos. "I demand to see those documents," Victoria shrieked, making a grab for the folder in Henry's hands. "This is obviously some sort of fraud. She probably forged them. That's what these people do, isn't it?" Her designer dress rustled as she moved, its cost equivalent to what she thought was my monthly salary. Caroline Thompson rose from her chair with regal indignation. I will not stand for this kind of disruption in my home. Elena, if this is some misguided attempt to elevate your status in this family— Status? I interrupted, my voice cutting through the chaos like a steel blade. Let's talk about status, Caroline. I opened my laptop bag, removing a series of reports. Shall we discuss the status of the Singapore project that James bankrupted? Or perhaps Peter's systematic rejection of technological advances that cost the company millions? Or maybe, I paused, looking directly at Alexandra, we should examine the creative accounting that's been hiding personal shopping sprees as business expenses? The room fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of guilty recognition. James had gone pale, while Alexandra's hands began to tremble around her champagne glass. You've been spying on us? Richard Sr.'s voice shook with rage. How dare you? How dare I? I stepped forward, power radiating from every move. How dare I protect my investment? How dare I expect competence and integrity from my executives? Or perhaps you're asking, how dare I, a janitor's daughter, rise above the station you tried so hard to keep me in? Henry cleared his throat. The acquisition was completely legal. Mrs. Martinez Thompson utilized a brilliant strategy of shell companies and holding corporations to gradually acquire controlling interest, while the family was too busy maintaining appearances to notice their company slipping away. But the board— Peter started weakly. The board has already been briefed, Henry confirmed. Tomorrow's meeting was merely a formality to announce the changes publicly. Though I must say, this Christmas revelation has a certain poetic justice to it. Victoria collapsed onto a nearby sofa, her perfectly composed facade cracking. This can't be happening. Do you have any idea who we are? I know exactly who you are, I replied calmly. You're the people who gave me an etiquette book as a Christmas gift, thinking it would humiliate me. You're the people who looked down on my father for cleaning your offices, never noticing that he was teaching me the most valuable lessons about dignity and hard work. You're the people who were so convinced of your own superiority that you never saw me coming. David stepped forward again, this time addressing his family. All these years, you treated Elena like she was beneath you. Did it ever occur to any of you that she graduated top of her class from business school? That her little consulting firm was actually a cover for one of the most successful investment strategies in corporate history? Oh God, James muttered, realization dawning. The Morton takeover last year. That was you too, wasn't it? I nodded, allowing myself a small smile. Consider it a practice run. They were just as arrogant, just as convinced of their inherent superiority. They never saw their downfall coming either. Caroline made one last attempt to regain control. This is our family company. You can't just— Actually, I can, I cut her off. And I have. But unlike you, I don't believe in nepotism or social status. Starting tomorrow, every position in this company will be earned on merit alone. I turned to Catherine, whose eyes were shining with unexpected hope. Which is why I'm appointing Catherine as Chief Innovation Officer. Her ideas about modernization were always brilliant, even if you refused to listen to them. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 10, its deep chimes echoing through the tension-filled room. The elaborate Christmas decorations that had seemed so impressive earlier now felt like props in a theater production that had gone desperately off script. I moved to stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snowflakes dance in the external lighting that illuminated the mansion's grounds. I believe, Henry said, breaking the heavy silence, we should all take a moment to process this information. He placed the folder of documents on the coffee table, where it commanded attention like a bomb waiting to detonate. The Thompson family members stared at it as if it might bite. Richard Sr. had sunk into his leather armchair, his usual commanding presence deflated. For the first time, he looked his age, the carefully maintained facade of power crumbling, before everyone's eyes. Caroline stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, but her perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly. 25 years, I said softly, still gazing out at the snow. That's how long my father cleaned these offices. Every night he would tell me stories about the importance of education, of working smart, of understanding how power really works. I turned to face the family. While you were teaching your children about inheritance and social status, he was teaching me about observation and opportunity. David moved to stand beside me, his presence supportive but not protective. He understood that I didn't need protection anymore. All these years, he said, wonder in his voice, you were building this. Why didn't you tell me? Because you loved me for who I am, not what I owned, I replied, touching his hand gently. You were the only one in this family who saw me as a person, not a social climber or a gold digger. The words gold digger made Alexandra flinch, visibly. Victoria, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stood up. The charity gala, she said, realization dawning on her face. Last spring, when you suggested changes to the corporate giving program, you were already in control then, weren't you? I nodded. Your suggestion to cut the employee education fund to increase the budget for the debutante ball was particularly illuminating. It showed me exactly how out of touch this family had become with modern business practices. James paced the room, his expensive shoes clicking against the hardwood floors. But the Singapore project? If you knew it was failing, why didn't you stop it? Sometimes, I replied, the best lesson is allowing people to face the consequences of their own arrogance. Your refusal to listen to the market analysts, your insistence that the Thompson name alone would guarantee success, those decisions needed to play out. Peter, who had been examining the documents with increasing despair, looked up. The technology upgrades I blocked, the ones Catherine proposed, will be implemented immediately, I confirmed, along with several other modernization initiatives that this family has resisted out of nothing more than stubborn pride and fear of change. Richard Jr. had been remarkably quiet, his usual arrogance replaced by a calculating look. There must be some way to challenge this legally. The family trust is ironclad, Henry interrupted. My law firm has reviewed every detail. Mrs. Martinez Thompson's acquisition strategy was perfectly legal, if brilliantly conceived. She simply understood something that none of you did. In the modern business world, actual competence matters, more than family names. Carlos appeared silently at the door with fresh coffee, and I watched as the family automatically ignored his presence, all except Catherine, who smiled and thanked him. You see, I said, gesturing to the moment, that right there is why this company needed new leadership. You've forgotten that every person has value, that success isn't inherited, it's earned. The room fell into contemplative silence, broken only by the occasional clink of coffee cups and the distant sound of carolers somewhere in the neighborhood. The magnificent Christmas tree, with its perfectly coordinated ornaments and precisely placed lights, seemed to loom over the scene like a glittering witness to the family's humbling. I'd like to introduce someone, I announced, pulling out my phone and dialing a number. Someone who helped make all of this possible. The family watched in confused silence as I put the call on speaker. Dad, are you there? Right here, mija. My father's warm voice filled the room. The sound made several Thompson family members shift uncomfortably in their seats, particularly those who had openly mocked his former occupation. How's the Christmas revelation going? Richard Sr.'s head snapped up at the familiar voice. Robert Martinez? Our former janitor? The very same, my father replied, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Though these days I prefer strategic facilities management consultant. That's what the company letterhead says anyway. Victoria's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in confusion. You've been consulting for the company? Since when? Since your cousin James started the Singapore project, my father answered. Elena needed someone who knew every inch of the company's operations, someone who had spent decades observing how things really worked. not just how they looked on paper. I watched understanding dawn on their faces as my father continued. You see, when you clean the offices of powerful people, you become invisible to them. They talk freely, leave documents out, never thinking about the man with the mop. 25 years of that, and you learn things, important things. Is that how you did it? Richard Jr. demanded, turning to me. Industrial espionage through the cleaning staff? Nothing so dramatic, I replied calmly. Everything was done legally, through public records and official channels. Dad simply helped me understand where to look, what questions to ask, which patterns to observe. The same patterns you would have seen if you hadn't been so busy maintaining your social calendar. Robert, Caroline began, her voice strained with forced politeness. Surely you understand that business is about more than just observation. There's a certain breeding, a certain background required. My father's laugh cut her off. Mrs. Thompson, with all due respect, that kind of thinking is exactly why your family lost control of the company. While you were teaching your children about social status, I was teaching Elena about hard work and strategic thinking. David, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly spoke up. I remember you, Mr. Martinez. You used to leave candy on my desk when I was working late in the legal department. You always knew when someone needed a kind word or a moment of encouragement. And you were the only one who ever said thank you, young man, my father replied warmly. That's why I told Elena she had chosen well when she married you. You saw? People as people, not as their job titles. Alexandra, still struggling to process everything, interjected. But the wealth required to purchase controlling interest. How could a janitor's daughter possibly? Investment returns compound, I cut in. Every penny I earned went into strategic investments. While you were spending fortunes on designer clothes and country club memberships, I was building a portfolio. The first small company I acquired led to a larger one, then another, and another. The Morton takeover provided the final resources needed for Thompson Manufacturing. You know what the real irony is? My father added. If any of you had bothered to really look into Elena's background instead of just dismissing her, you would have discovered her success. But you were so convinced of your own superiority that you never even Googled her name. Henry, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. Robert, I owe you an apology. I was on the board when you requested funding for the employee education program 15 years ago. We dismissed it without proper consideration. Water under the bridge, Mr. Blackwood, my father replied graciously. Besides, Elena has already reinstated that program, with significant improvements. The room fell silent as the full weight of the situation settled over the family. Their carefully constructed world of privilege and presumed superiority had been completely upended, and by the very people they had looked down upon for so long. The silence in the room was broken by the sound of high heels on hardwood as Margaret Thompson strode purposefully toward me, her face a mask of desperate calculation. Surely we can come to some arrangement, she began, her voice honey-sweet. After all, your family now. Perhaps a seat on the board, a significant position in the company. I already have those things, I interrupted gently. I own the company, remember? The statement hung in the air, its implications still sending aftershocks through the room. Dad, I spoke into the phone still on speaker. Would you like to tell them about the new employee support initiatives we're implementing? Ah, yes. My father's voice carried a note of pride. Full college tuition reimbursement for all employees and their children. Healthcare benefits that actually provide real coverage. A living wage program that will bankrupt us, Richard Jr. exploded. You can't just throw away profits on the working class. I pulled out another folder from my laptop bag. Actually, according to these projections, investing in our employees will increase productivity by approximately 40% in the first year alone. Happy, well-supported workers tend to be more productive. Isn't that right, Catherine? Catherine straightened in her chair. I've been saying that for years. The data from other companies clearly shows. Data? Alexandra scoffed. What about tradition? What about the Thompson family legacy? The legacy, I said firmly, of running this company into the ground. Through mismanagement and nepotism, that legacy ends today. Starting tomorrow, every position will be earned on merit alone. James, who had been examining the financial documents with growing horror, looked up. These numbers, they can't be right. The losses from my Singapore project were significantly worse than you reported to the board, I confirmed. You hid the true extent of the failure to protect your position. Just like Peter buried reports about our outdated technology causing us to lose contracts. Just like Alexandra's creative accounting to hide personal expenses. Victoria surged to her feet. You've been spying on us all this time, gathering information, plotting behind our backs. I've been doing my due diligence as the majority shareholder, I corrected. Everything I learned came from official company records and legal channels. The fact that none of you bothered to notice the changing ownership structure speaks volumes about your attention to actual business matters. Henry, Richard Sr. appealed to his old friend. Surely you're not supporting this. This coup? Henry shook his head slowly. Richard, she saved the company. While your family was busy maintaining appearances at charity galas and country clubs, Mrs. Martinez-Thompson was implementing the changes needed to prevent complete collapse. The board has reviewed everything. She didn't just buy the company. She rescued it. But what about us? Caroline's voice held a note of genuine fear. This company has supported our family for generations, our lifestyle, our positions in society. We're maintained at the expense of the company's health and its workers' well-being, I finished. But don't worry, Caroline. Unlike you, I don't believe in punishing people for their background. Everyone will have the opportunity to earn their position, including family members. You'll just have to prove your worth through actual work rather than birthright. Mija, my father's voice came through the speaker. Tell them about Carlos. I smiled, thinking of the young server who had been so invisible to the family all evening. Carlos, Maria's son, will be heading our new employee education initiative. He has a master's degree in organizational development that he earned while working full-time. Exactly the kind of determination and talent we need. The mention of a server being promoted to management caused several family members to blanch. Their world was being turned upside down in ways they had never imagined. Possible. The elaborate grandfather clock struck 11, its chimes echoing through the mansion like a countdown to the end of an era. Snow continued to fall outside, adding another layer of hushed solemnity to the already charged atmosphere. I think, I said, rising from my seat, it's time to be completely transparent about tomorrow's changes. I removed a final set of documents from my laptop bag. These are the new organizational charts and position appointments, effective immediately. Henry distributed the papers with practiced efficiency. The rustle of pages turning filled the room, followed by sharp intakes of breath and muffled exclamations as family members found their names, or in some cases didn't. This is outrageous, Richard Jr. exploded, throwing his papers down. You've demoted me to junior analyst? I've been CFO for 15 years. And in that time, I replied calmly, you've made a series of catastrophic financial decisions that would have resulted in immediate termination in any other company. The junior analyst position is a chance to learn proper financial management from the ground up, if you choose to accept it. Victoria scanned her document frantically. My name isn't even on here. What about my position as head of publics relations? That role will be filled by someone with actual public relations experience and a track record of successful crisis management, I explained. Though we are offering you a position in community outreach, where your social connections might be put to constructive use. Dad, David spoke up, his voice carrying across the tension-filled room. I see I'm listed as Chief Legal Officer. Because you earned it, I confirmed. Your legal work has been exemplary, and you've consistently demonstrated ethical leadership. The fact that you're a Thompson is irrelevant to the appointment. Catherine was staring at her paper in disbelief. Chief Innovation Officer? Really? Her voice trembled with a mixture of surprise and vindication. Your proposals for modernization have been consistently brilliant. I nodded. It's time someone finally listened to them. Alexandra, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burst into tears. But what about our status? Our social position? How will we maintain our lifestyle? Perhaps, my father's voice came through, the speaker. It's time to learn the value of earning your position rather than inheriting it. James stood up, his face flushed. I won't accept this. I'll fight it in court. The Thompson name still means something in this city. By all means, Henry interjected smoothly. We can take this to court, where the evidence of your mismanagement, financial irregularities, and ethical violations will become public record. I'm sure the business press would be fascinated. The threat of public exposure hung heavy in the air. The Thompson family had always valued appearance above all else. The prospect of their failures being exposed in the media was perhaps the one thing they feared more than losing their positions. Now, I continued, my voice firm but not unkind, everyone here has a choice to make. You can accept these changes, learn to earn your positions based on merit, and be part of building a stronger, more ethical company. Or you can leave with your severance packages and try to maintain your lifestyle on what's left of your personal fortunes. Caroline, who had been silently watching her family's world crumble, finally found her voice. And what about the family traditions? The Christmas parties, the charity galas, all the social events that define our position in society? Those can continue, I assured her, but with a different purpose. Instead of showcasing wealth and status, they'll celebrate achievement and community contribution. The Spring Gala, for instance, will now focus on raising funds for employee education, programs rather than debutante balls. This isn't just about business, my father added through the speaker. It's about creating a company that values every person's contribution, from the CEO to the newest janitor. Something this family forgot long ago. Richard Sr. rose from his chair with the deliberate motion of a man carrying the weight of generations, his eyes fixed on the etiquette book still lying on the side table, the gift that now seemed like a prophecy of their own downfall. All these years, he began, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. We thought we were preserving a legacy. Instead, we were destroying it through our own arrogance. He turned to face me, decades of privilege warring with newfound humility in his expression. When David first brought you home, I saw only what I wanted to see. Someone beneath our station. I never bothered to look deeper. The true irony, I responded, moving to stand by the Christmas tree, is that everything I learned about business came from watching your family's mistakes. Every time you dismissed an employee's suggestion because of their background, every time you chose status over substance, you taught me exactly what not to do. Victoria, still clutching her organizational chart, stepped forward. But what about our shareholders, our business partners? Once they learn that Thompson Manufacturing is being run by a janitor's daughter? I finished for her. They already know. The major shareholders were briefed last week. Surprisingly, they seemed more concerned with the company's 40% increase in productivity under my leadership than with my father's former occupation. Alexandra dabbed at her tears with an embroidered handkerchief. The country club committee will never understand. Our social position will be ruined. Perhaps, Catherine interjected, finding her courage. It's time we earned respect through actions rather than inheritance. Elena has shown us that true success comes from merit, not breeding. James paced the room, his expensive shoes marking each step with desperate emphasis. There must be something we can offer you. Some way to maintain our positions, money, connections, anything. You still don't understand, I said quietly. This isn't about revenge or power. It's about building a company that values every person's contribution. A place where someone like Carlos can rise to management based on his abilities, not his background. Richard Jr. slumped into a chair, his usual arrogance deflated. All those board meetings where you attended via video conference. You were watching us, weren't you? Evaluating our performance. I was giving you chances to prove yourselves, I corrected. Every decision you made, every opportunity you had to choose competence over connection, merit over status, you consistently made the wrong choices. Henry cleared his throat. The quarterly reports speak for themselves. Under Mrs. Martinez-Thompson's quiet leadership, the company has already shown remarkable improvement. The board is fully confident in her vision for the future. Caroline stood by the fireplace, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the mantel. And what about family loyalty? Does that mean nothing to you? Loyalty works both ways. My father's voice came through the speaker. Where was your loyalty to the employees who gave their lives to this company? To the people who cleaned your offices, served your meals, kept your world running smoothly? David moved to stand beside me, his presence a bridge between the old world and the new. Mother, father, all of you. Elena isn't destroying our family legacy. She's saving it by transforming it into something worthy of preservation. The weight of personal consequences settled over the room like a heavy snow, muffling the last protests of privilege and entitlement. Each family member faced their own moment of reckoning, their carefully constructed world of social superiority, crumbling beneath the weight of merit and accountability. The elaborate grandfather clock showed nearly midnight, marking the temporal boundary between the old Thompson manufacturing and its new future. I retrieved my laptop and pulled up a presentation that had been prepared for tomorrow's board meeting. Since we're all here, I began, connecting the laptop to the large television mounted above the fireplace. Let me show you exactly what changes are coming. The screen flickered to life, displaying the company's new organizational structure. First, I explained, as charts and graphs appeared on screen, we're implementing a complete restructuring of our corporate hierarchy. No more positions held purely through family connections. Every role, from entry-level to executive, will have clear performance metrics and accountability measures. Richard Jr. winced visibly as financial projections appeared. These numbers, they're impossible. You can't possibly expect this kind of growth while implementing all these employee benefits. Actually, Henry interjected, these projections are conservative. The pilot programs Mrs. Martinez-Thompson secretly implemented in our West Coast divisions have already exceeded these targets. Victoria leaned forward, her social mask cracking as she studied the data. The West Coast divisions? But they've been outperforming everyone else for the past 6 months. That was your doing? Simple, really, I replied. We promoted based on merit, implemented employee support programs, and created clear paths for advancement. Turns out, when people feel valued and see opportunities for growth, they tend to work harder. But the cost, Alexandra protested weakly. The employee education program alone must be astronomical. I switched to the next slide. Let me show you how the numbers actually work, by eliminating wasteful spending, like your personal shopping sprees charged to the company, Alexandra. We've freed up substantial capital. Add to that the savings from proper project management, unlike the Singapore disaster, and we're actually operating more efficiently than ever. Catherine studied the charts intently. These innovation initiatives, they're the ones I proposed 2 years ago. The ones the family board rejected as unnecessarily progressive. Exactly, I confirmed. And now they're driving our technological advancement, putting us ahead of competitors who are still stuck in outdated methodologies. Rather like this family has been. The screen shifted to show employee satisfaction metrics. Carlos appeared in a video testimonial, speaking eloquently about the impact of the new education program. The family watched in stunned silence as the young man they had barely noticed articulated a vision for employee development that put their old management style to shame. Starting tomorrow, I continued, every employee will have access to advancement, opportunities based solely on their abilities and dedication. The cleaning staff, the maintenance crews, the support personnel, they're no longer invisible. They're vital parts of our corporate community. Community? Richard Sr. scoffed. But his voice lacked its usual conviction. A company isn't a charity organization. No, I agreed. It's not. It's an ecosystem where every member contributes to overall success, something my father taught me while watching this family ignore the potential of their workforce. My father's voice came through the speaker again. Tell them about the mentorship program, Mija. Show them how real leadership works. The screen displayed the new Corporate Mentorship Initiative, a program pairing experienced employees with promising talent from all levels of the company. The data showed improved retention rates, increased productivity, and strengthened company loyalty. This, I explained, is how you build a sustainable business, not through inherited privilege or social connections, but through developing every person's potential, even those you once considered beneath your notice. As the television displayed the final slides of tomorrow's presentation, a new sound filtered through the mansion, the arrival of cars outside. Through the frost-etched windows, we could see vehicles pulling into the circular driveway, their headlights cutting through the falling snow. I smiled, checking my watch. Right. On schedule. The family exchanged nervous glances as the doorbell chimed through the house. Carlos appeared at the doorway. Mrs. Martinez-Thompson, they're here. His voice carried a new confidence, matching his straight posture and direct gaze. The Thompson family watched in bewilderment as their server transformed into a poised professional before their eyes. Who's here? Caroline demanded, her hostess instincts battling with her loss of control. This is a private family gathering. Actually, I replied, moving toward the foyer, I invited some additional guests to join us for the end of this historic evening. People whose lives will be directly impacted by tomorrow's changes. Through the grand entrance came a stream of people, employees from every level of Thompson Manufacturing. Maria led the group, no longer in her housekeeper's uniform but dressed professionally. Behind her came technicians, office staff, maintenance workers, and middle managers, many of whom the Thompson family had never bothered to notice before. What is the meaning of this? Richard Sr. sputtered, but his protest died as he recognized faces among the crowd. People who had worked for the company for decades, whose names he had never learned. These, I announced to the room, are the real pillars of Thompson Manufacturing. The people whose dedication and hard work have kept this company running while the family focused on social status and privilege. Maria stepped forward, her head held high. For 30 years I've cleaned these offices, watched this family celebrate their successes built on our labor. Tonight, we're here to celebrate a new beginning. James shifted uncomfortably as he recognized some of the technical staff, the same people whose warnings about the Singapore project he had ignored. Peter couldn't meet the eyes of the IT team whose modernization proposals he had repeatedly dismissed. Sarah Chen, I called out, and a young woman stepped forward from the group. Would you like to tell the family about your new position? Sarah, whom the Thompsons had passed in the hallways for years without acknowledgement, smiled confidently. As the new head of digital innovation, I'll be implementing the technological updates that Mr. Thompson previously rejected. My team has already developed solutions that will save the company millions in operational costs. Victoria's face reddened as she recognized Sarah. The same employee whose promotion recommendation she had blocked 2 years ago, claiming the company wasn't ready for diverse leadership. One by one, employees stepped forward, each sharing their new roles and visions for the company's future. The Thompson family watched in stunned silence as their former invisible workforce revealed depths of talent and expertise they had never bothered to discover. "Miguel Ramirez," I announced, and a middle-aged man in a maintenance uniform stepped forward. "Starting tomorrow, he'll be heading our new operational efficiency department. His suggestions for improving factory floor layouts have already increased productivity by 25% in trial implementations." Alexandra gasped audibly. Miguel had worked in their main factory for 15 years, his innovative ideas consistently ignored because of his position and background. The room hummed with energy as more employees shared their stories, their hopes, and their plans for the company's future. The contrast between their passionate commitment and the Thompson family's entitled complacency couldn't have been more stark. The clock edged closer to midnight as I moved to address the assembled group, the old guard of the Thompson family on one side, the newly empowered workforce on the other. The Christmas tree's lights cast alternating shadows and illumination across faces that reflected both apprehension and hope. "Tomorrow morning," I began, pulling up news slides on the television, "we begin implementing our transformation plan. Not just organizational changes, but a complete cultural shift." The screen displayed a timeline of initiatives, each carefully crafted to dismantle generations of corporate hierarchy. "Phase 1 begins at 9 a.m., I continued as detailed schedules appeared. "Every department will hold town hall meetings where new team structures will be announced, merit-based promotions, immediate salary adjustments, and educational opportunities will be implemented across all levels." Sarah Chen stepped forward again, tablet in hand. "I've already begun coordinating with IT teams worldwide. By noon tomorrow, our new internal communication platform will go live, giving every employee direct access to resources and advancement opportunities previously reserved for upper management." Richard Jr. shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "This is madness. You can't just throw open the gates like this. There's a natural order to things." "That natural order nearly bankrupted us," Miguel interrupted, his voice firm. "While you were attending charity galas, we were watching millions wasted on vanity projects that ignored fundamental operational issues." The screen changed to show a series of efficiency graphs. "These improvements," I explained, "came from listening to our factory floor workers, the people who actually understand our production processes, the same people this family traditionally excluded from decision-making." Maria stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "For years, we watched, we learned, we understood exactly what needed to change. The only difference now is that someone finally listened." David, who had been observing quietly, addressed his family. "Can't you see? This isn't just about changing management structure. It's about unleashing the full potential of every person who works for us." "Which brings us to Phase 2, I continued, advancing the presentation. "Starting next week, we're implementing comprehensive training programs across all departments. Everyone, including current management, will have the opportunity to prove their worth based on actual skills and contribution." Victoria raised her hand, her voice strained. "And those of us who don't meet these new standards will be offered training and support to improve," I replied. "Unlike the old Thompson manufacturing, we believe in developing talent rather than discarding it. However," I paused meaningfully, "those who refuse to adapt, who cling to outdated notions of privilege and entitlement, will find there's no place for them in the new organization." Carlos stepped forward with a stack of documents. "These are the new employment contracts, reflecting our commitment to fair wages, advancement opportunities, and performance-based compensation. Every position, from entry-level to executive, now has clear metrics for success." The Thompson family watched in amazement as their former servers and maintenance staff displayed expertise and professionalism that shattered every preconception they'd held. Each new speaker revealed another layer of talent that had been hidden beneath the surface of their privileged assumptions. By this time tomorrow, I announced, Thompson Manufacturing will be operating under a completely new paradigm. One where success is earned, not inherited. Where innovation comes from merit, not status. Where every voice has the opportunity to be heard. As the presentation concluded, I gestured for everyone to be seated, transforming the formal Christmas gathering into something more intimate and meaningful. The contrast between the Thompson family's designer attire and the workforce's practical clothing seemed to fade as individual stories began to emerge. "Maria," I said softly, "would you like to share your story about your daughter's college education?" The longtime housekeeper stood, her dignity matching any society matron's bearing. "My Isabella," she began, her voice clear and strong, "graduated top of her class in chemical engineering last month, thanks to the employee education program Mrs. Martinez Thompson secretly implemented. The same program this family voted against for decades." She turned to face Caroline directly. "The program you called a waste of resources at last year's board meeting." Caroline had the grace to flush, especially as Isabella herself stepped forward, a poised young woman whose brilliant research was already revolutionizing the company's manufacturing processes. Sarah Chen rose next, holding up a patent document. "This automation system I developed while working in IT support? The one Mr. Peter Thompson dismissed without even reading? It's now saving the company $2 million annually in operational costs." Peter seemed to shrink in his chair as Sarah continued. "Starting tomorrow, I'll be leading the team implementing it across all our facilities." One by one, employees stepped forward, each sharing a personal story of talent ignored, potential dismissed, or innovation suppressed under the old regime. Miguel spoke of safety improvements he'd suggested years ago, now finally being implemented. Carlos described his journey from server to education program director, his master's thesis becoming the foundation for the company's new professional development initiative. Alexandra watched in obvious discomfort as her former personal assistant detailed the shopping expenses she'd been forced to hide in company accounts. James couldn't meet the eyes of the Singapore project team members who had tried to warn him about the impending disaster. "Remember last spring?" a maintenance worker named Tom spoke up. "When I tried to tell you about the failing equipment in the East Wing factory? You said, and I quote, 'Know your place, worker.' Well, my place now is facilities operation manager. And those repairs you ignored? They would have saved us from the 3-day shutdown in July." Richard Sr. raised his hand like a chastened schoolboy. How long have you all been planning these changes?" "They've been planning improvements for years," I answered. "You just never bothered to listen. Every person in this room has valuable insights, innovative ideas, and deep commitment to this company's success. The only difference now is that they have a leader who recognizes their worth." Victoria, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke. "The marketing campaign that won industry awards last month. That wasn't from our usual agency, was it?" "No," replied a young woman stepping forward, one of the receptionists Victoria had routinely ignored. "That was my team's work. I have a master's in marketing communications, but under the old system, I couldn't even get an interview for an internal position. Now I'm heading our new in-house creative department." David watched these revelations with a mixture of pride and shame. All this talent, right under our noses. We were so busy protecting our positions that we couldn't see the incredible potential surrounding us. The stories continued, each one adding another crack to the Thompson family's crumbling facade of superiority. Every employee who spoke revealed not just capability, but deep understanding of the company's operations. Understanding that came from years of careful observation and genuine commitment to their work. As midnight approached, I pulled up one final set of data on the television screen. A comprehensive overview of the company's transformation over the past year under my quiet leadership. The numbers told a story that even the most resistant Thompson family member couldn't deny. Let's look at the actual results of our pilot programs. I began displaying a series of graphs. In divisions where we implemented merit-based promotion and employee development initiatives, productivity increased by 45%. Employee retention rose by 60%. Customer satisfaction scores reached record highs. Sarah Chen stepped forward with her tablet, sharing detailed analytics. The modernization programs that Catherine proposed, which were repeatedly blocked by the family board? We implemented them in 3 test facilities. The result was a 30% reduction in operational costs and a 50% decrease in production errors. Richard Jr. studied the financial charts with growing dismay. These profit margins, they're higher than anything we achieved in the past decade. How? Simple, Miguel answered, pointing to the efficiency metrics. When you value your workers, listen to their ideas, and give them opportunities to grow, they give you their best in return, something your family never understood. Isabella, Maria's daughter, presented her research findings. By combining floor workers' practical knowledge with modern engineering principles, we've developed manufacturing processes that are both more efficient and more sustainable. The same innovations the family dismissed as unnecessary complications. And the screen shifted to show employee satisfaction surveys. Carlos highlighted the dramatic improvements in workplace culture. In areas where we removed artificial barriers and implemented merit-based advancement, job satisfaction increased by 80%, sick days decreased by 40%. People actually want to come to work now. Victoria stared at the numbers in disbelief. But our traditional management style, our family's approach, was outdated and inefficient, I completed her thought. Look at these comparison charts. Divisions still operating under the old system consistently underperformed compared to those embracing change. James winced as his failed Singapore project appeared on screen, contrasted with successful initiatives led by previously overlooked employees. The numbers were damning. Millions lost through his arrogance versus millions saved through collaborative, merit-based leadership. Here's something interesting, Sarah noted, pulling up another data set. Employee suggestions implemented under the new system have resulted in cost savings of over $50 million in just 6 months. These are the same employees whose ideas were previously ignored because they didn't have the right family connections. The presentation continued, each slide revealing another aspect of the company's transformation. Quality control metrics, customer feedback, market share. Every indicator showed marked improvement under the new management approach. Catherine studied the innovation metrics with growing excitement. These new product developments, they're all from our internal teams, not outside consultants? All internal, I confirmed. When you give talented people resources and opportunities, amazing things happen. Your own proposals proved that. Once they were finally given a chance to be implemented. Even Richard Sr. couldn't argue with the financial projections. The company's value had increased substantially since I'd begun quietly implementing changes, with stock prices reflecting growing market confidence in the new direction. As Christmas Eve transformed into Christmas morning, the atmosphere in the Thompson mansion had shifted dramatically. The elaborate decorations that had earlier symbolized generational wealth now seemed to highlight the changing of the guard. Outside, the first light of dawn began to paint the snow-covered grounds in shades of possibility. Before we conclude this evening, I announced, I want to share our vision for the company's new culture. The television screen displayed images of the renovated corporate headquarters. Gone were the stuffy portraits of Thompson patriarchs, replaced by collaborative workspaces and innovation centers. The executive floor that was once reserved for family members? I gestured to a photo of a bright, open space. It's now our Employee Development Center. Those private dining rooms where deals were made over expensive wines, they're now training. Facilities and creative spaces open to everyone. Caroline gasped as images of her beloved executive lounge appeared, transformed into a modern cafeteria where employees of all levels could interact and share ideas. But where will we hold our board member luncheons? In the same place everyone else eats, Maria answered firmly. The days of artificial separation are over. The screen showed the new daycare center, built in what used to be the Thompson family's private garage space. Quality childcare for all employees, Carlos explained, because talent doesn't stop when you become a parent. Sarah Chen demonstrated the new internal communication platform where ideas could be shared and developed regardless of the contributor's position. No more good suggestions dying in middle management because they came from the wrong person. Richard Jr. watched as his former executive suite was shown transformed into a collaborative tech hub. But where will the family leadership work? Leadership will be wherever the work requires, I explained, including the factory floor. No more ivory towers, no more artificial barriers. Every space in the company is now designed for functionality and collaboration, not status display. The presentation shifted to show the new employee recognition wall, where achievements were celebrated regardless of title or background. Isabella's groundbreaking research hung alongside Miguel's efficiency innovations, each contribution valued equally. Perhaps most importantly, I continued, we're implementing transparent pay scales and promotion criteria. No more advancement based on last names or social connections. Every position, from entry-level to executive, will be earned through demonstrable skill and contribution. Victoria shifted uncomfortably as images of the new HR policies appeared. But how will we maintain our position in society without our traditional roles? By earning them, David replied, finally fully embracing the new vision. By proving our worth through actual achievement rather than inherited privilege. The screen displayed the company's new mission statement: innovation through inclusion, success through merit. Below it, photos showed diverse teams working together, their collective expertise driving the company forward. Tomorrow morning, I announced, these changes go public. The stock market will open to news of Thompson Manufacturing's complete restructuring. But more importantly, every employee will arrive to find their workplace transformed, not just physically, but culturally. And the family? Alexandra asked quietly, her usual confidence shattered. Will have the same opportunity as everyone else, I replied. Those who are willing to adapt, to earn their positions through merit rather than name, will find plenty of opportunities. Those who can't. I let the sentence hang meaningfully. As Christmas morning fully dawned, casting long shadows across the Thompson Mansion's grand foyer, I stood before the assembled group, family members and employees alike, to deliver the final message of this transformative night. 1 year ago, I began, I stood in this very room during my first Thompson family Christmas, listening to jokes about my background, enduring subtle and not-so-subtle reminders of my place in society. Tonight, we've redefined what place truly means in our company. The etiquette book still lay on the side table, its gold-embossed title now seeming like a relic from a bygone era. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. This gift was meant to remind me of my supposed limitations. Instead, it will serve as a reminder of why these changes were necessary. I handed the book to Carlos. Place it in our new corporate museum, alongside other artifacts of the old Thompson Manufacturing. Let it teach future generations about the danger of judging people by their background rather than their abilities. Richard Sr. stepped forward, his bearing markedly different from the imperious patriarch of just hours before. I've been CEO of this company for 30 years, he said, his voice heavy with realization. Yet in 1 year of your quiet leadership, you've achieved more progress than we managed in 3 decades. Because, I replied gently, you were too focused on maintaining power to see the potential surrounding you. Every person in this room, every employee you ignored, every suggestion you dismissed, represented an opportunity for growth and innovation. Victoria, who had spent the night watching her carefully constructed world crumble, spoke up. What about our family legacy? 4 generations of Thompson leadership just gone? Not gone, David answered before I could. Transformed. Our true legacy shouldn't be about maintaining privilege. It should be about building something meaningful, something that values every contributor. Maria stepped forward, addressing the family directly. For generations, we watched you celebrate your successes in this mansion. Successes built on our work while you treated us as invisible. Now, we're finally visible, finally heard, finally valued. Starting today, I announced, Thompson Manufacturing will publish an annual Innovation Impact Report highlighting contributions from all levels of the company. Merit, not inheritance, will be our measuring stick for success. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the changed faces of the Thompson family. Some, like Catherine and David, showed understanding and acceptance. Others still struggled with their new reality, but the undeniable success of the changes left little room for argument. My father, I said, glancing at the phone still connecting us to him, taught me that true worth isn't found in social status or family names. It's built through hard work, integrity, and recognizing the value in every person. That will be our company's guiding principle moving forward. Mija. My father's voice came through one last time. I think they finally understand. As the employees began to depart, preparing for the official announcement that would transform Thompson Manufacturing forever, I watched the family absorb the full impact of the night's revelations. Their Christmas gathering had become something none of them could have imagined, the end of one era and the beginning of another. Next Christmas, I said to the room at large, we'll celebrate together, not as rulers and servants, not as upper class and lower class, but as one team, each person valued for their unique contribution to our shared success. The snow continued to fall outside, covering both luxury cars and modest vehicles in the same clean white blanket, nature's own lesson in equality. Inside, the Thompson family faced their first morning as regular employees, while those they had once looked down upon stood tall, ready to lead the company into its merit-based future. The annual Thompson family Christmas gathering had indeed become legendary, though not for the reasons anyone could have predicted. It marked the night when privilege gave way to merit, when inherited power yielded to earned respect, and when a janitor's daughter proved that true worth lies not in social status but in the courage to create positive change. The end.